Welcome to our November Crescent Connections. Lisa Crosta here from Crescent Harbor Private Wealth. And today I'm joined by Jodi Murnick, a professional career coach who has been specializing in helping our young college grads get their first jobs. And I'm sure many of you out there have read the news that the market's a little bit tricky for our recent college grads. I have one and another on the way, so I can attest to that. So I'm going to let Jodi share some of her great insights and how she's helping not just college kids, but we're going to focus on that today. The recent grads make their way through the marketplace. Jodi, you want to introduce yourself a little bit?
Sure. Hi, I'm Jodi Murnick. I am a career coach. I started my career as a college recruiter about 30 years ago. So it feels like full circle. Maybe not quite
Right,
30, 25 years ago. It feels like it's come full circle.
right.
I went from college recruiting for a startup software company to advertising sales for a dot-com that was really kicking off internet advertising in the late 90s. I was pitching the information highway, if that gives you guys any idea of the timing. And after that, I went to business school, got an MBA, came out a marketer. I spent a bit of time in corporate America, General Mills, Johnson and Johnson, before having two of my three children. And I took a step back from the corporate world and went to work for a boutique consulting firm and did brand and strategy and some merger and acquisition work in the space for about 10 years. And then just recently, really, as I started to pull it all together, for years I've been watching smart, high potential kids really struggle in the marketplace because they didn't have the self awareness and confidence and really storytelling skills to succeed. And with the rise of AI, especially right now, there was just a Wall Street Journal article, that very clearly articulated AI will not be taking your job. Someone who works with it better will. And
Right,
and the
right.
part I would have loved to add to it is, and as they say, your humanity is your advantage over AI. And I would say somebody who uses theirs better than you will.
Well
So
said, well said. Yep.
so this pivot to being a career coach is relatively new for me, but it's been about 25 years in the making.
Right, exactly, exactly. So let's jump in a little bit and we're going to go through different steps, but big picture, what would you say the most important first step a recent college grad should do as they beginning this task of looking for a job?
So, the biggest thing I see, um, I usually get college grads when they are at the point of where their parents know they are like spinning in overwhelm. And, as mom and dad, and I get it, I'm a mom too. In my house, I'm just mom, can see exactly what they need to do and can't get them off of the spin cycle. So the first thing is actions create clarity.
Right.
So, I'll tell them that you don't need the most amazing plan because planning is actually a procrastination technique. Um, you just need one you'll execute. And so usually where I start with them is you need a LinkedIn profile because connections are your currency in this marketplace, right? And
Right.
we've got to start building that up. And the fastest way to do it organized is to get yourself on LinkedIn, make sure that your strengths are easy to spot, your experience is easy to see, what you bring to the table is very clear, and then start connecting.
Right. Right. Um, I haven't had this with my son that just graduated, but what if they're not clear about their career path? Um, I don't know how, if it's more common today, less common today to not know where you want to go.
I think it's more common. I think it's less talked about,
Okay.
right? I think there's so much that they see online where it looks like everybody knows what, it's a in the curated,
Right.
5 second view, everybody looks like they've got all that all together.
Yes.
But more often than not, there's a lot of confusion. I think that's so normal because, you're 21 years old. You're not supposed to know what you're going to do with the rest of your life.
Right.
So usually like where I would start with, where I would start with them is it's just getting organized in it. So let's figure out what are you passionate about? I'll usually start with what do you do when if nobody what would you do if nobody paid you to do it? What do you
Right.
like to do? And then we usually go from there to what are you really good at? What are the subjects in school you always did really well in? What are your natural skill sets? Um, then we go to, okay, well, what can you get paid for? We start
Right.
exploring like putting those two things together. What can you get paid for?
Right.
And
And I,
finally, where are the market gaps, right? Where's the market hiring? Where are there opportunities? And from there, we start to find some direction.
right. And I like what you said, that it's not necessarily what your major is, it's what your skills are. And you can help them hone in a little bit on what they're good at and where those jobs might align with those skills, right?
Yeah, so one, we talk about trend. I have a whole workshop I do on trends in the marketplace. And one of the trends that actually works in these grads' favor is that it is really it's moving more and more to a skills-based hiring um, system. So people are so much less concerned about what your major was and what your
Okay.
titles have been, and they're way more interested in what you can do. And so,
Got it.
especially when I get some kids that are a little overwhelmed and unclear, focusing in on what you can do is a great way to build confidence and start to like build some direction.
Right. Right. No, absolutely. Um, I know like when my son was looking, he was trying to take some modeling courses while he was waiting and when he was interviewing and you know, almost every couple weeks having something else he could add to his resume that he completed, right? And there's tons of things out there you can do, I'm sure, in your field. Um,
Completely.
yeah, to help, add to your resume. So speaking of resume, I mean, obviously for most kids, I don't know, obviously, but to me, for most kids, this is where they start, right? Um, and we see the problem sometimes where your resume doesn't get through the AI, even to the next step. And you hear all these stories of people who apply, and they get so few breakthroughs. So, the old days, it was like buzzwords and action words. So, can you help, or do you want to talk about how you can help? I guess in two ways: one, to get past that AI hurdle, and then to get to the human eye, so it also looks good for them too, right?
Right. So you really like you said it. You've got two readers,
Right.
right? And the first one you've got to get through is an AI reader. Most of the jobs, especially the ones people apply to online, get like 200 to 300 applicants
Yeah.
per position,
Yeah.
right? Nobody can read through 200 applications. So they use these ATS, is what they're called, automated something systems, and it's an AI system that they use to screen. And so, one of the things you want to do is make sure that your resume will pass those screens. And so
Right.
there's all different prompts that I work with students to use. I usually tell them the good news is you don't need to spend as much time, um, worrying over every single word like we used to, because
Mm-hmm.
AI is going to do that for you. But
Okay.
you do need to work through what the stories are, because you want to think of your resume more as a showcase of your skills and less as like a checklist.
Mm-hmm.
And usually, as we're doing this, I start to have them tell me the stories, right? Tell me the story. Tell me about the time where you, in this resume, find an experience where there was a time where you didn't, the answer wasn't clear, or you had something that you weren't sure and you had to figure it out yourself. That's
Right.
your resume gold, right? Employers realize they can teach you pretty much any skill, technical skill you need to learn. They
Right.
can't teach you resilience. They can't teach you adaptability. They can't teach you initiative. And
Right.
those are the kinds of things I try to help my clients wrap up in their stories, so that not
Right.
only are they talking about, we did this project and this was the result. Action verbs, like you talked about, we still need that, right?
Right.
Developed, created, curated, all those great words. We still want to
Initiated.
use, we still need it, right? Um, Responsible for all those great things, but we also want to show the the powerful traits that are gonna get the kids hired.
Right. Right. And you had talked too about having, and we'll talk about AI at the end as well, but putting your resume through AI, right?
Yeah. So you wanna run it back through AI, right? So you can use AI to help you write it, which is fine.
Right.
Um, and then you want to add the human touch, right? You want to go back in and make sure it sounds like a 21-year-old human wrote it.
Right. Remove some of the adjectives.
Remove some of the adjectives, get rid of all those long dashes. Um, but what you also want to do then is you want to put it back into AI and ask it to look at it through the lens of these ATS readers for a specific job description. You
Right.
literally want to copy your resume and the job description back into AI and ask it what's missing.
That's amazing. And it'll tell you,
And it'll
like,
tell
this
you.
job needs this skill, and right, whether you can put it on there or not, at least you can tell what you're
Right,
missing.
well, you can at least think about, right? Like, how could I put it on there? Or
Right.
that this is something that's going to be a problem for me.
Right. Right. Um, so then resume first start, next step would be the interview, right? So you've gotten past the AI and the human, and you've gotten the interview. Um, and this is where I think it used to be easier if you just were personable and had the skill they were looking for, but now you got to be a step above that. Would you agree?
Yeah, here's the thing. And I think there's a middle step, right? So many of my clients where they fall down when they by the time they've gotten to me is they'll say, I've applied to 50 jobs online and I'm not getting through. And
Right.
one of the problems is that 80% of jobs are filled through networking.
Yeah.
So, those online jobs, before you even get to the interview, you need to be making connections, right? So those online jobs, you should submit them and it tells you who's hiring. But then you need to go back to that LinkedIn that you set up in the beginning and figure out who you know at one of those companies. And it might not be someone you know particularly. It might be someone your professors know. It's why you need to really have a wide net on your LinkedIn, right? You should definitely be connecting to your parents and your parents' friends and your friends' parents. But like your professors, people you worked with in an internship, anybody you know who might have a connection in your industry, because that's how you're going to get like a connection to a connection.
Right.
So, um, we can talk about that. But once you get into the interview, it's
Yeah.
really about showcase, being able to take your resume off the paper and tell it like a story.
Right. Stories. I mean, stories in sales, stories in presentations, they just work.
Yeah.
I told you a story of somebody who had a story that was a great story, but it was a high school story. And you helped them figure out how to transition that story, still use it, but make it not 8 years ago, how to pull it forward a little bit. Um, because I know that's one of the things that you can help the kids with, because not all the stories are 2 year or recent, but they're still good stories to tell. Just got to make them more relevant, right?
Yeah. So most of us, wherever it's sort of wherever you go, there you are. So like the great skills you have, somebody who's got initiative doesn't just show initiative one time in high school.
Right.
They've probably done more things and they might remember, there was that time on the football team that's a great story and great to tell. But then usually I can look at that young adult and say, okay, great. You're someone who takes initiative. I bet you did it in college too. Where else did you do it? Tell me some more stories about when you took initiative. And
Right.
sometimes we have to, sometimes I just help them think about it, but those stories are there. And so you want to show this is somebody who's got a track record of doing things like this. It wasn't a one-time event.
Oh, wait, before it, I want to ask this one question as being parents. So, how can a parent help without overstepping? And I'm sure you've
I,
seen this
I
all the
get
time.
this all I get this
I
all the
know.
time.
That's why I like this
Right?
question.
It is so hard. And I have my own kids, so I totally understand. I probably once a day one of my children tells me, "Mom, you're not my coach." Um, so I get it. And I think that the challenge is as parents and especially as professionals, right? You can look at we've hired countless entry level people and we know how they need to come across, right? We've
Right.
seen the pitfalls and all we want to do is help our young adult. And, for the last 21 years, we've been like cautiously letting go and like stepping back.
Right.
And this is a time where it feels like now I'm supposed to like really let go and the stakes couldn't be higher, right? So it's I so get that feeling. And so I sort of put together a few things that I think are helpful that are also not overstepping. And I
Right.
think the big thing I think of a lot and as a parent is most of the stuff we've been modeling for our kids since they were little is really stuff that's good for us too. And so that perspective works here too. So stay with me.
Okay.
There's a few things. First of all, I when I tell young adults be interested to be interesting. Interested people are interesting. So as parents, we can model that behavior. Reading newspaper articles, reading books, just sharing the kind of stuff we're interested in, not from the standpoint of did you see that article in the New York Times that says nobody's hiring anymore? It's AI taking over everything. Just generally interesting stuff. Having those kinds of it just keeps the conversation open with your young adult and gives them the idea that it's that like interested people are interesting. It also makes them in interviews much more interesting and come across much more intelligent and well read when they have a
Right.
lot of different things to talk about. I tell them study industries, not just companies. Get a good breadth of what's going on. Um, another one I talk about is AI for as parents getting really interested in AI and learning as much about it as we can. It's a good thing to model for our young adults because they definitely need to be interested and they
Yeah.
need to be learning as much. If I was graduating right now, I'd be learning as much as I could about AI, figuring out where it works, where it misleads. I mean, just yesterday, Cloudflare, that one of the big engines that powers a lot of different AI applications, went down for about 2 hours.
Okay.
I mean, I was back in 1990s college when your computer crashes and you're about to bring a paper and I had a presentation deck that I kept on Canva and
Okay.
I was trying to pull it down and Canva and I was like, oh my God, AI broke. AI can break. So
Oh
I
my goodness.
learned something new yesterday. AI can break. So that's one. That's another one. Um, Another one is your network, right? So one thing I tell parents is make sure that your LinkedIn network, if you're a professional, is
Right.
up to date and is clean and that your kid's connected to you.
Right.
And I say kids all the time. To me, they still feel like kids. I know they're young adults.
It's fine.
Um, they'll always be our kids. But make sure they're connected to you. And by showing them, how you're using LinkedIn, not showing them obviously they don't want you to tell them. But when they go on LinkedIn and they can see all of your connections and
Right.
what you're doing there, it's good for them. That's really
Right.
good for them. And the final thing I'll say is encouraging curiosity and experimentation. Right? This stage is really about your early in your career is all about learning. And the only way we learn is from trying new things.
Yeah.
Right? Trying new networking techniques. You might look at it and think that is the dumbest thing in the whole world. That's never going to work. But you never know, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes dumb things work. I just heard a story yesterday about a guy who told me he got a job because he went into, which I thought sounded crazy, but he went into an insurance company and would just go sit in the break room. And somebody thought he was an employee. And they started talking to him long enough. They hired him for like a different. They thought he was like an employee in transition. It was a crazy story, and I would never suggest it.
Funny.
But the point is just that crazy stuff works. So if your kid has a
Right.
crazy
Right.
idea about how they want to meet somebody, as long as it's not illegal and it's not going
Right.
to get them hurt, I would say let them try and encourage.
Right.
Them. And then I would also say tell them all the stories. You weren't born a seasoned professional. You came through
Right.
the ranks like everybody else. Tell them the stories. Tell them about the dumb stuff you did. The lessons you learned, because it's a great way to, connect on your own humanity with your young adult, and it makes them want to share with you and want to get ideas from you because they really feel like you know where they are.
Right. So if from a framework standpoint, if a kid's getting started or they're getting frustrated, what you had a number the other day we talked about, try to connect to, what'd you say, have one real meeting a week?
Yeah. Yeah, I think one real meeting a week is a really good goal because
Right.
we know that sometimes one real meeting requires five or more out. People get busy.
Right.
But
Oh yeah.
it's like anything in sales. When I was selling advertising for about 5 years, I was one of the top performers and I had this trick that wasn't really like a trick. It was just so basic. But I would take 10 business cards and I would stick them in my cup holder every morning. And I couldn't go home until I got rid of those business cards. And the idea was it would just create momentum and it
Yeah.
kept me going. And so I talked to the kids I work with about creating a system like that. Create
Hmm.
some system where every day you need to reach out to five, 5 to 10 is
Mhm.
my number,
Yeah.
right? Some days five feels easy, some days five feels hard. Some days five feels easy and you can get to 10. Some days
Right.
five feels hard, and career fairs are a great way to knock out 10. You go to a career fair, you can knock out 10 in one day and you are done. Um, but the idea is that they're going to start building those networks because I mean, being in business, you have to make a lot of phone calls to get a meeting.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
once you start making a lot of phone calls, those meetings start coming much faster.
Right.
And those meetings are the key to their jobs.
Yep. And I tell them they have to treat it like it's a job. You have to get up every day and be in activity. And we each have different expressions. I was saying to my son, you're playing in traffic, you're eventually going to get hit. Yours is a little nicer, momentum and timing. And I feel like that when those two things meet is when a job comes. And it is because you never know when the jobs are going to come up, when the openings are going to come up, people are going to leave. And if you're constantly turning that wheel, eventually a job's going to intersect with you. So you have to keep going. And I think if you have, like you said, a set number of people you have to reach out to a day, it gives you a list to do. And it can't be, just 20 jobs on Indeed with one click because probably only one of them's a real job. It has to be a little more thoughtful than that.
Well, jobs don't count.
Right. It's people.
It's people.
Right.
I only count people. I only count
Yeah.
people. And that is a huge hurdle when I first start working with young adults.
Okay.
They really, really do not, they really resist reaching out to people.
Yeah.
And it's like, there is no data, there is no fact I can tell them that will, convince them until finally, I usually say like within the first, 2 or 3 sessions, eventually I'll see the light come on. They'll look like, I know, I have to call the person, right? And the best is when they tell me, you won't believe it, I got this interview. And I'm like, really? How'd you get the interview? And they're like, that guy you told me I needed to meet with. I'm like, oh, look at that.
And now when you say reach out, to be clear, it's either a LinkedIn message, an email, or a phone call, I assume.
Yeah. I mean,
I'm,
asking a young adult, anybody, under 25, to make a phone call to somebody they don't know.
yeah, it was not
I
going to
mean,
happen.
talk about playing in traffic. It would be like I told them to run across the highway. They are not interested in that. But what
No.
you can do is you can send a LinkedIn message and ask for either a Zoom meeting or a phone call,
Right. Right.
right? Or an in-person meeting. I honestly and I try and explain this, from a communication standpoint, you know, it's like the lowest level of communication is a text as far as,
Right.
phone and whatever. Step two, stage two would be an email. Stage
Yeah.
three would be like a voice phone call.
Right.
Stage four is a Zoom, and five is in person. And
Yeah.
I mean that with building connection,
Yeah.
right? Like the easiest way to build connection is to sit down together. And
Absolutely.
it is amazing how often, if you ask somebody, hey, could I bring a cup of coffee to your office? I'd love to bring you a cup of coffee and sit down with you for 20 minutes.
Right. And that's the key. Bring it to them. Don't make them have to go anywhere. That's very key.
No, no. And it's sometimes when you get in there for 20 minutes, the next thing they'll say is, you know what, there's someone down the hall you should meet.
Right.
We were just talking about this. They do something or they went to your college or they
Right.
whatever.
Right.
It's amazing how, that one meeting might turn into 2 or 3.
Yeah. No, that's excellent. And then we didn't talk about this before, but I know this was common is that, kids will send an email if they have an email address, especially if you're trying to reach out to connections and you have the email and they don't respond. So I've recommended that you forward the old email and say, I'm sure your email box is full, or I'm sure you're so busy, some sort of reference to the email below, but letting them know that it was sent, because
Yeah.
everybody loses emails. We all get inundated, but we felt like that was a pretty good way to do it. I don't know. Is there a point? Do you have a number? How many times do you keep going?
Listen, I say most people want to help,
Yeah.
right? It's all about keeping perspective. Most people do want to help, and the paradox are very, very, very busy.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So the chances are they just got busy and they didn't see you. They're not purposely ignoring you. They're
Yeah.
just busy. So sometimes I'll also say, the definition of insanity is to continue to do the same thing over and over again and expect a different result. If
Right.
email isn't working, you might want to try, and you really want to get a hold of this person, connect with them on LinkedIn,
Yeah.
right? Send them a message through LinkedIn and say, hey, I've been trying to get a hold of you. I've sent you a few emails. I'm sure you're swamped. Is there any chance I'm going to be in your area or whatever?
Right.
Is there
Right.
any chance I could get 20 minutes on Zoom with you?
Right. So we'll just wrap up because I know we just touched on AI, but the kids, like you said, have to be comfortable with AI. So they run their resume through it, they can run emails through it, they can research their companies, their industry, any other like things that you find really interesting that kids are doing with AI to help get jobs.
Well, I think they should be using it to prep for interviews, right? Not just prepping for interviews like what questions are they going to ask me and what are good answers. I mean, that's one way people do it. But
Right.
I think that the other way is, I mean, in the old days we used to like listen to an earnings report.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, that was like, oh, wah, 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 right? Like I needed to stay, it was an exercise just to stay awake through the whole thing. Um, so I like run an earnings report through AI and say, give me what are the highlights and suggest, 3 intuitive questions that a college graduate might ask who's interviewing at this company.
Right.
Um,
Very
sometimes they're
specific.
crazy. And you have to know where AI is going to mislead you.
Right.
I had a client I was working with who emailed me yesterday and said, here, candidly, because I tell them to use AI all the time, so we don't hide that we don't think there's anything wrong with using AI. We think
Right. No.
when I work with my clients, I say it's a really great tool, And if you're not using it, like, why would you leave the best tool in your toolbox out?
Right.
You use it. So she emailed me and she said, Claude is really big on this question, but I think it, but I'm not into it. What do you think? Do you think I have to ask it? And I laughed and I said, Claude doesn't know you.
You're right, of course.
This does not, there is no way you would say this because this doesn't sound like you.
Yeah.
So no, of course. So, but let's think of another way. I like the idea. And so she and I together brainstormed, like, here's some things I think sound more like you in this. I like the idea. In
Yeah.
this idea, here's some things that sound more like you. Which of these are you more comfortable with? And so she and I kind of went back and forth on email for a few minutes and just
Right.
did the, like, okay, got it to a good place. It gives you ideas, right? So you
Yeah.
have to know, it's like any tool, you have to know how to use it and be comfortable with sometimes, like, this isn't me, right? I'm not going to
Right.
say this.
Right. And of course, the other thing is that there's so many podcasts on so many industries that can help you just become knowledgeable in speaking the language of that industry.
Yeah.
And you
And
can get
LinkedIn, right? Like, there's so many
exactly.
thought leaders.
Yeah.
There's so many thought leaders you can follow in all different places. Sometimes I
Right.
feel like I'm like a like an ad for LinkedIn because I talk about it so much. But
It's where professionals go. It's still the place to go. We use it all the time. I mean, my kids use it for work. It's yeah, it still works.
it still works. It's a great place to just, the other thing I tell them is it's a great place to get some visibility, especially kids who are introverted will say to
Hmm.
me, networking is so painful. And they'll say, I'm an introvert. I'd like, is there anything else I can do? And I'll say, you can't only do this, but you know where a great place for introverts is LinkedIn, social
Yeah.
media, because it gives you a place. Because usually the introverts I work with, and most introverts I know, candidly, are really thoughtful and good. It's
Yeah.
not they don't have ideas. It's this idea of, like, the way, of being so drained of energy in
Right.
the social situation
Right.
that they feel like it's overwhelming and they can't perform their best. And so I'll
Right.
say, go and be curious online. Go and be curious on LinkedIn. Find thought leaders and comment. And it's even in my own business how many people I've been connected to because they've seen something they wrote that I thought was interesting and I commented with my
Right.
own take on it, and they've responded. And I've started to build relationships with people who I would have never met otherwise. Today, I met a professor, a business school professor at Duke, who she and I just got into a really interesting exchange, who I would have never met otherwise.
Right.
So I really encourage, my young adults to do that. It's a great way to show their curiosity, learn the industry language, and they never know who they're going to meet.
Yeah. Yeah. Have to do it every single day, though. Momentum, 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 right?
Yes, yes,
Um,
yes.
well, I think we will leave it there. I'm hoping some parents of some of 'em are, I'm expecting my clients more for they're looking at this, for their kids, not themselves, but anybody, will put it up on our YouTube page. It has some great information for anyone looking for a job or love somebody who's looking for a job. So I thank you very much for your time. Jodi, let them know where they can find you.
Absolutely. My website is just jodimurnick.com. It's really basic. I'm on LinkedIn. Please connect to me. Encourage your young adults to connect to me as well. I love to help young adults even when they're not my clients. And there's a lot of people out there who will. That's why I always tell them, be sure you build your LinkedIn up. You never know. You never know who's going to help you. Connect to me on LinkedIn. You can follow me on Instagram. I'm at Jodi Murns. And otherwise, I'm sure you'll have my contact information
Yep.
on your
Yep,
website.
and our YouTube is Crescent Connections. Oh, well, it's Crescent Harbor Private Wealth, and you'll see all the interviews that we do on there called Crescent Connections. We're doing them monthly. So again, Lisa Crosta from Crescent Harbor. Jodi, thank you so much for your time today.
Thanks for having me, Lisa.